I know it may be hard for people to believe that already don't know ACI, but I can tell you that whatever your interest is in concrete, including lunar concrete, there is an ACI committee that is deeply involved in whatever your interest is. Again, finite element analysis, 3D printing, strut and tie modeling for brackets and corbels, whatever it is that is your interest in concrete. And I haven't even mentioned all of the material sides of things that you're expert on, Katie.
Hi, and welcome to this month's episode of Engineering Greatness, an original podcast series produced by the American Concrete Institute. I'm Katie O'Quinn, a civil engineer at the Bureau of Reclamation in Denver. With me today is Michael Paul, ACI President.
Hi, Katie, and thanks for that quick introduction. It's great to be with you here today. I'm really honored and very excited to be doing this podcast with you. I couldn't think of a better person to do it with. Once again, my name is Michael Paul. As Katie said, I am the current ACI president, and I'm also principal structural engineer with Larson and Landis, which is a consulting engineering company based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. And with that, I think we're going to kick things off here in terms of the back and forth between me and Katie. So, Katie, I'll start out by asking you, what inspired you to get into civil engineering? How did you end up in civil engineering, and in particular in the world of concrete?
Yeah, I, like many others, have engineering parents. So both my parents are mechanical engineers, not civil. But even as a kid, you just like grow up learning about math and science and asking questions about the physical world around me that it was cool that they were able to answer. They were able to help me on my math homework and my science homework. So it really, there was no like barrier of the big question, because I could always just ask mom and dad. But even in 5th grade, that we had a science fair, and for my project, I went around my little town looking at bridge designs, just like from under them and that kind of thing, and made little models of all the bridges that I saw, the different types. So it was like a truss bridge, and then me and my dad load tested them in his gym with just like looping a chain around them and stacking weights at the bottom. So not the most scientific, but I definitely had an interest in structures like way back as a kid. And so when I first chose Oklahoma State, it was mostly because it's the family university. So mom and dad went there, all my brothers went there, grandpa went there, and go to all the football games, So
The path was well paved.
Yes, so it was an easy choice. But it ended up, I got really lucky with the professors that I had, and being sort of led to a material that I'm so passionate about. So I started actually in architectural engineering because I was really, again, interested in like structures and wanted to do structural engineering at the time. And the Oklahoma State program is sort of a dual degree. So you take like 4 years of architecture studio with the architecture students. And that ended up just not being the best fit for me. So I switched over to civil engineering, ended up with Dr. Tyler Lay as one of my professors, which him. He's so excited about concrete, and that is like the coolest person to learn from. Just to have somebody that's passionate about something teaching you about what they're passionate about is just the best. And you see that so much with ACI, just like, being around passionate people, which is great. So he offered in, I think, the first day of reinforced concrete class, to, if anybody wanted to come work in his lab with him as an undergrad, that he had spots open. So I took that opportunity because I was like, this guy seems like he's having a good time. So, and didn't know anything about concrete at the time. And he put me with 2 PhD students that also really wanted me to learn and really wanted to teach me. So I was just like in this environment of people who were excited about concrete, who knew a lot about it, and I was able to learn from all of them. And at the same time, it felt like they really cared about me. I think like being in a small school like that was perfect because like I really feel like people invested in me there. And so anyways, I decided then that I wanted to go to grad school, and ended up with going to get a master's in structural engineering at UT, University of Texas at Austin. And that was coursework only. So I showed up without funding. I ended up getting pretty lucky, I think, that I got a TA position in the materials class. So that sort of like introduced me to the materials professors. So, because there's two sides, like structural engineering, concrete, and materials. They're kind of, sometimes separated, even though they're still under civil engineering, but we definitely mix. But yeah, so I did all my structural engineering courses. I had a couple design internships. And then when it was time to graduate, I was still, I was looking for jobs and such, but I just went into Dr. Maria Younger's office to just like, I don't know, I kind of just wanted to talk about life, because at this point I had worked for a little bit, and I was just like, kind of wanted some advice. And she offered me to stay and get a PhD with her then. And that was I just like could feel really excited when she offered that. And so I was like, okay, this is what I should do, because it's exciting, it's a great opportunity. So I ended up doing 4 years of dissertation work. I'm still working on my dissertation, but I've done research with her. I haven't quite finished. But yeah, and it's in, she does a lot of or my project was like SCM research. So I did, a lot of like material characterization, reactivity testing, and some durability stuff. But yeah, so it's all like in cement, where up until now, my background was sort of in structural engineering, and the concrete classes were always my favorite. But then now, like, I am working at the Bureau of Reclamation, and I went from this small scale, like PhD studies, where it was more like cement chemistry and reactivity testing. And now it's like the largest scale concrete you can find, almost, I think, are dams. So,
Yeah, dams, right?
yeah, so I've really gotten sort of all sides of the spectrum here within civil engineering, which is cool for me. So anyways, yeah, that was long, but that's sort of my journey into concrete. What about you? I think your path was maybe even a little more windy than mine. So tell us about it.
Sure. So yeah, my path was pretty circuitous, but you reminded me, talking about science fairs, that I think my root interests as a youth, which was a long time ago, but I think I can still remember a little bit. My root interests always were in building things or fixing things or how things worked. So you talked about your parents being mechanical engineers. I'm not. I'm a structural engineer, but I think my original interests came partly from the mechanical engineering side, how things work. So I also participated in science fairs as a grade schooler, and not so much building structures, of course. That's not typically what grade schoolers get involved with,
No,
but
I'm
things
sure
that
I
you
was
can,
influenced. Yeah.
yeah, things you can, put your hands around.
Right.
But that's sort of where my root interests were. So my academic career, I received A, B, or BA, as most people call it, from Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. And my major was research psychology.
Oh, wow.
But my path, even through undergraduate work, was a little bit meandering. And although I majored in psychology, in my senior year, I was able to take several art classes, both design and quote appreciation. And that sort of got me tied back to how things get built and the world of physical constructions, if you will. And so by the time I graduated, I ended up in environmental psychology, which is the interaction between people and the built environment. And I was looking around, next steps, and applied. So a little bit opposite from you. I actually applied to the architectural program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and was accepted there.
Oh, wow.
I think they they took pity on a poor boy from Indiana and said, we don't have anybody from Indiana. Let's give this guy a try. So started out in the architectural program, and was recruited by one of my instructors, a professor of civil engineering, James Becker, who said, Michael, you seem to have an aptitude for math and engineering. Why don't you come on over to the engineering side? So ended up getting a master's of architecture and then a master of science and civil engineering from MIT. And that really got me started in the engineering world. Now, when I was in school, so contrast a little bit from what you talked about, Katie, at Oklahoma State and UT Austin. When I was in school, I wasn't so much involved in concrete per se. I was to the extent it was part of the structural engineering curriculum, but probably no more than anybody else, and no more than some other materials also in civil engineering. But when I got out and started working, soon after, I ended up over in the concrete side. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. But I just want to circle back. It sounds like you had great mentors in your academic career that brought you into the world of concrete and ACI. And that's really good. Later, I did the same thing. But I'm going to ask, while you were still in school, any involvement with the clubs or like the ACI student chapters? And if not, no worries. I'm just trying to sort of set the scene here.
Yeah, no, in undergrad, I mostly, I worked in the lab as in my upper levels. And then I also got the chance to be a TA for like the strengths and materials class, which was really fun. So I sort of stayed, I wasn't per se super involved in like concrete canoe or any of those that the young people get really excited about.
Right,
but
which is really a big thing these days.
Yeah,
Canoe, the bowling ball,
right.
You didn't
People
build a
talk
concrete
about,
bowling ball.
No, I did help with the competition one time though, or a couple times at actual ACI. But no, I really I did Engineers Without Borders. And so that was sort of one of the clubs that I did. I was involved in the Structural Engineers of Texas and the ACI Central Chapter at UT. But in undergrad, I really just, worked in the lab, did my TA thing, and went to school and had some fun here and there too. So, but yeah, so I think as far as like the influence of my schooling to where I am today, it's really about the people who I was around. Like you said, it was really like the mentors that poured into me and helped me along the way, and yeah, just like really cared about me and taught me things. So yeah, the groups are definitely beneficial. Like it's great to be just with like-minded people for sure, and again, just like with people who are passionate about things. But yeah, so my schooling was mostly working.
But again, you mentioned two of your mentors, Tyler and Maria, both distinguished professors and true ACI champions. And Maria is our next president. She will follow me.
She is.
And I will be happy to shower her with rose petals as she takes the gavel at the convention. But again, that was a sort of a great introduction to the ACI community. Mine was, as I said, not so much in school. It was after I got out of school, where one of my first projects as a structural engineer, not the very first, but in the first couple of years, was working on an all-concrete historic lighthouse in the Delaware Bay called Brandywine Shoal Lighthouse. And it's off Lewis, Delaware. It's between Delaware and New Jersey in the bay there. And that all concrete, including a cast-in-place caisson that was sunk, and then a cast-in-place. So the caisson was cast in place offshore and then towed and sunk. The superstructure is all cast-in-place concrete built on top of this sunken caisson. And I was like, whoa, where do I go for information about this concrete structure and what needs to be done for maintenance, repair, rehabilitation, and all of that. And so I looked around, and it's like ACI. I mean,
There you go.
the American Concrete Institute, that's where you go. So I am getting to the point of mentors here.
Mhm.
So I think at my first convention, I had no idea what was going on, showed up, and I don't even remember where it was, but what I distinctly remember was that one of the first committee meetings I went to was 120, History of Concrete. And I'm going to ask you to talk about your ACI committees in a second here. But the important thing was that I went into that meeting and it was chaired by a past president named Peter Smith. And of course, he had never met me. I'd never met him. I didn't even know he was past president. And he was just the kindest person and took an immediate interest in my interest in concrete, welcomed me to the committee, said, "Oh, this is a fabulous project you're working on," and then consequently introduced me to several, probably dozen experts in concrete repair and rehabilitation that I could talk to learn more about what I needed for my project. So the big circle I'm making here, coming all the way back, is those mentors. And Peter Smith, Mary Hurd, Jim Warner, Russ Fling, another past president, all were people that really brought me into the ACI community. So was your experience somewhat similar in terms of ACI committee work?
Yeah, I think in addition to Tyler Lay and Marie Younger, I also had those two PhD students that from the, when I was however old, 19 or whatever, that sort of told me about ACI. Like I knew Dr. Lay always went and that he was really active. But as an undergrad, it's kind of hard to get to go to those types of things.
Right.
So they were like, you have to go. So my first one was in Philadelphia. Well, because they wanted me to go to meet professors to start looking for grad school research, basically. And so and Dr. Lay helped me out too. So I'm really thankful for that, to get to go to that first ACI convention. And it was pretty scary, but not too bad. And Dr. Lay walked me around and introduced me to people, like different professors. I actually met Dr. Younger at that convention. She doesn't remember, but
I bet she does. And that was a great introduction. That's like perfect. I mean, that's all about ACI and the convention. So keep going. Yeah, tell me more.
Super great to meet people. And then after that, I applied for the fellowship and received one. So that, gets you like 3 more, that you get to go to 3 more conventions with the fellowship program, which was huge just to help like get me settled. They give you a mentor too. So I got to, just walk around with other people, sort of show you the ropes so that you don't have to go around by yourself. So that was like really such a great program for me.
So I just want to interject there just for a second. And make sure that our audience knows what you're talking about is the ACI Foundation Fellowship and Scholarship Program. And so you were an ACI Fellowship recipient, and that is a great opportunity for students, and especially graduate students, but also undergraduates, to get involved with concrete and ACI in the world of concrete construction. So back to you, but I just wanted to reemphasize that is the ACI Foundation Fellowship and Scholarship Program that Caitlin is talking about here. So back to you.
Yeah, so I was very thankful to receive that and get funded to go to ACI for the next few times. So that sort of lasted me through my master's degree. And then once I started doing research, that's when you can really like know which committees to go to, because you can kind of feel out what exactly you're interested in, what types of research, what types of like topics in the community that are important to your research and will support you. So I really was mostly working on natural pozzolans and calcined clays and that type of thing. So I focus most of my efforts into the ACI 240 Pozzolans Committee. So that one has been a good one for me. Since like working
And
at.
what was that experience like? Were you welcomed onto the committee? Was it hard to get
Oh,
on?
yes.
How
Well,
did you negotiate that? Because once again,
yeah.
if you show
So,
up and don't know anybody, I mean, how did
right.
that work?
Yeah, I think part of it is, I met people through the fellowship recipients. Like, it's a good way to meet your peers too, like not only people who are already in ACI, but other students.
Uh-huh.
So like some of those people are still, people I see all the time at ACI. But really just like talking about your research with people, um, going with people in your lab, taking advantage of professors that offer to, help you out and let you shadow them. It's really just like there are so many people that are trying to help you learn, and want to see you succeed. So for me it was really just, um, you know, accepting that and going and shadowing people and
Uh-huh.
walking around at ACI with different professors and things. But yeah, so
Uh-huh.
I also, I did kind of the tour. I have been in some code, sat in on some code committees and
Those are the
you
tough ones. So everybody
yeah,
wants to
I know.
join a code committee. And,
It's just
I guess my
yeah,
advice to folks listening to us here in the podcast is that's a great goal, but you need to work up to that.
yes, definitely.
You don't need to be old necessarily or have no hair, but you definitely need to sort of bootstrap your way up there. You can't now you can sit in pretty much on any technical committee
Yeah,
as a visitor, right?
right.
I
Yeah.
think I'm saying that
Yeah,
correctly.
they say when
But
they're
yeah, to
closed.
actually
So,
join the committee, it takes a little work. So to
right,
those of you who are just getting started, as Katie is saying, find what really interests you in the world of concrete at the technical or educational or certification committee level,
right.
and go there. Don't
Yeah.
aim necessarily for the code committees. But back to you. Back to you. You're giving
Yeah.
great advice here.
So that was sort of, my research. And then now that I work here at the Bureau of Reclamation, I started going to like the soil cement
Uh-huh.
committee, which, I had not really uh
It's a
knew
whole
about
different
that
world, isn't it?
existence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been cool to just like as you change and learn about new things to start learning from other people, the experts in that field. um
Mhm.
so yeah, and you can be an associate member of several committees, and it's not near as hard to do, and that lets you like get on the email list and know what publications they're putting out. And so it helps you kind of sort of just stay plugged in and know what's going on, so that you don't feel lost when you're actually at the convention.
Right. And so I would uh, follow right on and say that that's a great recommendation. And again, it goes back to find things that you're interested in. Uh,
Definitely.
I know it may be hard for people to believe that already don't know ACI, but I can tell you that whatever your interest is in concrete, including lunar concrete,
Right.
there is an ACI committee that is deeply involved in whatever your interest is. Again, finite element analysis, 3D printing, strut and tie modeling for brackets and corbels, whatever it is that is your interest in concrete. And I haven't even mentioned all of the material sides of things that you're expert on, Katie. But there is something that ACI has at least one committee that will directly relate to your interests. And that's how to get started.
Right.
Find those committees that really align with what your interests are.
Right.
And great way to start. So
And
thanks again for
they're
that.
usually looking for, volunteers too. So if you know something about it, well, yeah, I mean, they always want people to contribute to their documents and things, because ACI puts out so much
That that is definitely
material.
true.
So
Yeah.
and so there's people working on all of that stuff. So if you
So I'm
see
going
something that you're interested
to
in.
sort of circle back a little bit and ask you
Yeah.
to talk about your research. So you alluded to what you did, and I won't go all the way back to Oklahoma State, but let's
Yeah.
say UT Austin, and then contrast that with what you're doing now at the Bureau. So
Yeah.
maybe how has your research changed a little bit?
Right. So yeah, like I said, my dissertation research was pretty, it was on really about pozzolans. So,
Okay.
pretty,
And can I
it's
ask you
early
just to
on in cement
explain
chemistry.
for those who don't already know, what is a pozzol? What
Yeah.
is that? What is an SCM in the concrete industry?
Yeah, so it's a supplementary cementitious materials. We use them really frequently, fly ash and slag typically.
Okay.
But there are some, so they contribute to concrete. They one replace cement, so they're lower carbon basically, so it's like environmentally friendly. But two, they actually they can make your concrete better. They refine the pore structure, mitigate ASR, lots of benefits to using them. So fly ash has been king for a long time, and over time we're sort of depleting that. And so now my research
So
is looking.
would it be fair to say that supplementary cementitious materials, and in particular, you talked about pozzolans, but almost
Yeah,
the same thing,
yeah,
very important to our industry right now, right?
right,
And
yeah,
very important to
huge.
ACI, and a lot of focus in ACI about those.
Yes,
Back to you.
yes. Yeah, so the low carbon concrete push is huge. It's so important. And there's been like Department of Energy grants, there's been so many people within the industry are looking to reduce the carbon footprint of concrete.
And so, is that
And
important to the Bureau?
yes, definitely, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the ways that it sort of translates. So the Bureau is actually, I don't know, I was so excited when I learned, like when I toured the lab here. I really wanted to continue doing research, but also get to do like site work and condition assessment and that sort of thing. So the Bureau of Reclamation was like felt like such a good fit. But so, everybody's been using fly ash for, a while, since the 50s, I think. And but now we're looking at like natural pozzolans again. So like your
Uh,
calcined clays, your volcanic
right.
ashes, which is what my dissertation research was on. And but it's cool because like the Bureau of Reclamation typically use local materials for all these huge dams. So they actually, like, we have record of pumice is being used in like the 40s, and even a calcined clay that was made. So it's interesting, like having all of this, history about it, and now we're like turning back to it a little bit, or at least exploring
Uh,
those options. So yeah, it's really cool, just like the difference between the two and how like directly applicable it was when once
right. And
I
you mentioned the ACI committees. So how is your research work at the Bureau tied back into ACI? And you mentioned you're now looking at soil cement, which you didn't even know ACI had, but it
yeah,
definitely does. It's been
but
around a long time and very important. So talk
right.
a little bit about how your current position ties back into ACI and vice versa.
Yeah, so we definitely want to stay current at the Bureau of Reclamation. We want to stay like at the forefront of the industry. And like a lot of our projects go out like 15 years or something. So we
Mhm.
really have to do some like predicting as far as what materials we expect to be available. And that,
Right. And you
we
mentioned
really have to
locally
be plug
available.
in. Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so, yeah, sort of locally. They definitely really did locally back in the day, but now,
Right.
it's sort of like whatever the industry is dictating at the time. But yeah, so you really have to know, you gotta really try to know what's going on and be able to like interpret, what you think the industry is going to do. And we definitely always use SCMs, or not always, basically, because we have ASR, we're all in the West. And so we have alkali silica reaction issues that
Uh,
we're trying to mitigate. So we typically will use SCMs. And so yeah, the fly ash shortages and the changing cements is all very, very important
uh-huh.
to my industry now, which so yeah, it's been cool to see like going from small scale to large scale. And
And where do you learn about all that stuff? ACI,
okay,
right?
ACI, yeah, talking to people too. So what's cool too is ACI, like as a researcher, you sometimes are sort of in the research world, but with ACI, it really brings everyone together. Like cement manufacturers, the engineers that are the designers, and, the mix design people, like every ready mix people. So ACI is really where you can just like come together and all talk about how like these things that we're researching in academia affect everyone else.
Yep.
And how that's going to be implemented. Because even so for my pozzolans research, I have like soils basically, like they're clays that I'm calcining in the lab, and translating that to actually fun. Today I'm at a cement plant in Nebraska, because
Okay.
they're doing a limestone calcine clay batch today. So it's like a trial
Oh,
batch. But so
cool.
it's part of research that I was studying for the last 4 years or whatever. And now, so I'm going from like small scale to getting to see them actually like make it at a cement plant. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so it's cool to see, yeah, just like how these things progress and how the industry is changing. Because
Right.
it's definitely changing. So
Right. And so looping all the way back around, because I'm guessing we're getting close to our time limit here. Um, I think part of what you have said so well, and I definitely would second, it really is all about the people in ACI. And yeah, we
yeah,
talk about committee work and all that stuff, but it is the fact that you are able to befriend and get smarter by,
yep,
and just simply talk to people that know so much about concrete. And in my case, so much more than I know about a whole bunch of different aspects of concrete.
right,
Every day in ACI for me, I'm learning at least 5 new things that
yeah,
I didn't know before. Is that sort of the same for you?
yeah. And I think um definitely about the people, and because it's fun learning from people who, one, are like the experts in the world a lot of times, and just getting to connect with them on your own interests. But yeah, to reiterate that a bit, like advice I think for students and young professionals that uh I saw just like going through my undergraduate and graduate career, was that, again, like people, there are so many opportunities, especially within ACI, that people are offering to you as a student that you can just say yes to. So I went to the ACI Central Texas chapter, and
A great
was
chapter. A great
a great
chapter.
run,
Tell them
a
they're a
great
great
one.
chapter.
You all are great. Yeah, and they're pretty active, and I was asked if I wanted to ride along to just look at the admixture levels at all the ready mix plants around. So it was a SICA representative, and
What a
he was
great
just like,
tour. What a
yeah,
great
he was just
tour.
like,
Yeah.
if you want to ride along sometime, let me know. And I just, I think I texted him like, hey, I'll take you up on that kind of thing. So yeah, it's just like important to just, you know, learn where you can. And there's so many opportunities to.
Right. And actually, you brought up an excellent other example. Pretty much up to now, we have been focused on the ACI conventions that happen twice a year, once in the spring,
Right.
once in the fall. Locations that vary. The next one we have coming up is in Philadelphia in a few months. And then after that, we're up north in Toronto. But those happen twice a year. But Katie, you were spot on. And thank you for talking about the Central Texas chapter. ACI also, and especially for those who don't know us, there probably is a local chapter, and that includes internationally, where
Right.
you can get involved at the local level right away, and then perhaps move into the conventions as circumstances allow and your interests dictate. So another great aspect of ACI is
Right.
are all the chapters. So
Yeah, and in my experience, they, the Central Texas one gave out a scholarship every year to students. And then now, I'm at the Rocky Mountain one now. But they
another great chapter. Wait a minute,
another
that's the
great
best
chapter.
chapter. Which one's the best?
No, they're both great. Um, but yeah, and they do, like conference sponsorships, like will they
Yep.
pay for to get to go? Because I know there's sometimes like the financial barrier of getting to go with young professionals, just because you're doing a design work or whatever. So just limiting that barrier is huge, and there are opportunities like that in all of the, or in a lot of the local chapters, and they do typically like once a month meetings. So
Correct.
that's where you can really get involved in like your own local industry too.
Yep.
So because it
Easy to
really is,
attend,
yeah. So
inexpensive.
since
Yep.
like from the material side, like since we're using like sort of local materials, and like all the policies are different state by state, just like the standard practice is different. So it's also important just to, communicate with the industry within your region too, to know like what's going on there. Because yeah, like, I mean, Texas rolled out 1L cements really early, and other people were like, oh, I haven't seen those yet. But yeah, so it really, it's that's big too, to taking that opportunity as a local chapter.
Yep. So I'm going to wrap things up here in a second, but before I do that, I'm going to ask you any parting words of advice, not really, maybe to two different audiences. One is the undergraduate student who is interested in different materials and maybe looking at concrete. Why go into concrete? And then to the graduate student who is looking around, where do I go after I get my master's or my doctorate? Any last words of wisdom for both of those crews?
Yeah, I think for undergraduates, it's really like what I've been saying, that just take advantage of those opportunities that are being presented to you that you might not notice. Like if they actually do want to help you, and be a little bold in asking for things. Like, don't annoy professors too much. Like, don't annoy people too much. But if somebody says like, oh, we'll take you to all the ready mix plants, just do it, and apply for those scholarships too. Like, you never know. And yeah, just like be confident in yourself, and find people who support you and really lift you up, and also challenge you. So like, your peers should challenge you, your mentor should do that too, but also just like the support that I was given over, the last 7 years or whatever my grad school has been, has just made me feel so lucky to be a part of this community. And then for looking for jobs, I think I sort of
Right. So you're working on or have your degree. You're moving into the working world. You have all of your ACI connections. What's your advice there?
So I think part of it is that I tried a lot of different things. Like, I've had a lot of different types of internships. I worked in transportation for a little bit before I went to grad school. So part of it like is sometimes you have to like try what's out there, and sort of figure out where you're going to go. So there's going to be some time there that might feel lost, but like, it's not. Like, if you're learning, it's not wasted, So I think one is just like, don't be afraid to like just try it out and see if you like it. And also don't be afraid to like change direction, because in the end, like, you have a long time to work in this industry. And so you can really sort of maneuver around and find where you feel like you fit, and also where you feel like, your passion lies, or what parts inspire you. But yeah, so looking for jobs, I think I was looking for something pretty specific. And so that was really helpful, but also there's not very many places that exist that do exactly like what I was looking for. So that kind of made the choice a little bit easy, I think, because it was just like, I already knew people from ACI that worked here. And so I knew what they do. And so I think in talking to people in ACI, you can really learn like what people do and what their day-to-day looks like, and see if that's something that makes sense for you for the future.
Great advice. Yep. So you have that network in ACI where you can, even if it's not with their, that person's particular organization, that person, she or he, can tell you sort of what's going on generally, and then what's going on specifically with them, and give you a great overview, right, of what your options are, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
So I would second everything you just said. I would also, once again, remind our audience here in the podcast about the opportunities with the ACI Foundation Fellowship and Scholarship Awards. Happens every year. I won't say it's going on now because it depends on when you're listening to this podcast, but I can tell you it's going on right now when we're making the podcast.
They're usually due in October, so.
Yeah. So coming right up. So that's a marvelous opportunity for up and coming students and graduate students to get closely involved in this wonderful ACI community that Katie and I have been talking about. So thanks again for joining us, and thanks to everyone, all of you that are going to listen to it going forward. You're validating what Katie and I are trying to talk about here in this episode of Engineering Greatness. Join us each month as ACI brings together pairs of young professionals and maybe slightly older hands, in this case, in the concrete industry, to engage in conversations about life and work in the concrete industry. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Lots of opportunities out there. For more information about the American Concrete Institute, ACI, as we've been saying here during the entire podcast, visit us online at concrete.org, concrete.org. And at the bottom of that page, you'll find the link to the ACI Foundation, which sponsors the fellowships and scholarships that Katie and I have been talking about. So with that, on behalf of Katie and with thanks to ACI staff and the folks that are organizing this podcast, thanks so much, and we will see you again next time.